Are we on?
Well, wait a minute, let me
Hey,
see. Are we on?
I'm
Let's
not
see here,
on.
let me
You
get my
must be.
glasses out and look here, let's see. It says that we are, we're on.
Weston, you better get in here
Come
and
in
go to a
Put
chair.
your hands down, I'm not armed, okay?
Don't you believe it.
Okay.
All right, I'm kind of dirty. We've been putting signs up all day.
Right, we
Good to
checked
see
the
you, Bob.
guns
How you
at
doing,
the,
sir? How are you? Weston
yeah,
Lawn.
Jerry?
How you doing?
got a fresh
Yeah.
shirt.
I rooted for your daddy.
That's
I live in
nice.
North Georgia down there teaching
Is
school in
that right?
Whitfield County when he
All right.
beat that woman down in Chattanooga.
Good to see you,
Right.
sir.
How we gonna
Hey,
do
this
this?
Followed-
is the
I
president.
followed your daddy for years.
We need another seat.
Good.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, there's one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get things started, I'm gonna get out of the
Get in
way.
the middle there where
Yeah,
we
yeah.
That's your
I understand you got married and everything.
I did, and I've learned a whole lot.
We make Bob leave his gun at home, you're safe.
Are we on, is it okay they got a hat on?
Yeah, Lord, yeah.
They can't see you on the radio real good.
Yeah.
That's why we started doing this, as we got better looking with age, we decided to go to the radio.
Oh, so this is no visual? There's no.
Well, we're on the internet right
Yeah,
now.
we already own the.
Oh, this is live.
Okay.
On the
They're
internet,
getting you over in Benghazi.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chinese, we got a lot of
Any
people
future ride
Chinese watch
either
this
on
show.
this show.
So how long am I
They
on
wanna
with you guys?
see?
I don't think it will step
How long am I
out.
on?
I cut myself
As
putting up
long as you
signs.
won't stay, we only got an hour. But you won't stay as
As long
long
as
as
you
you
say what I
stay,
want
you
you
stay
to
on that.
say.
What's that?
As long as you say what he wants to hear.
I'm just thinking.
You're welcome.
We gonna do what I'd like to do.
You just want to go do what you want, come get me in 45 minutes or
Right.
If you get your phone, just call me if it's early. Thanks y'all for doing this. I'm gonna run get a Band-Aid and fix
Okay.
myself.
If you bought that wood
It won't
for
hurt
the
him too
signs
bad.
that circle our metal, you're in trouble. You better go get some rabies shots.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Might have diseases.
Oh, yeah, come on, you got room here.
In fact,
Get over here, get over here.
Goodness. Now, we're gonna say this is our claim to us here. All four of us have college degrees.
right?
we should be going on in a minute. Let me do
Now, wait a minute, this guy finished the 3rd grade.
Right.
with
Probably-
honors.
probably
After
the-
5 years.
Probably the smartest one of us all. Yeah, he was shaving before he got out of the 3rd grade.
I wanna do our 2 commercials and get them over with.
Okay.
And then I'm just gonna,
Oh, you think he's gonna run all of our paying customers off?
well, I don't know, but I thought what I'd do, since we at least need to do that, we don't have to prove it more, I'll just do it and be done with it.
All right.
Well, I would introduce him first so people won't leave.
5,
One,
4, 4, 4, 4.
5, 6, 2, 5, 4, 4, 4.
Yeah, okay.
Or is it 54, 40? I don't know.
It's good to be with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Well,
I said, thanks for having me. No kidding.
oh, yeah, we enjoy
If
it.
you stand there,
We got some pretty serious vetting we're gonna do while you're here.
That's all right. I can handle that.
Hope he brought you an encyclopedia.
He's good.
Good.
He's doing real well. I don't know what he's up to this weekend. I've been on the road for 4
We're
days.
talking about our views and opinions now.
Are you still working?
Oh, yeah.
Or Chattanooga?
Doing both, yeah. I try to get a little work done the first few days of the week. I'm usually on the road Thursday,
Right.
Friday, and Saturday.
We're running non-profit organizations now. We didn't intend it that way, but it has turned out that way on the Barack.
Is that right?
Well, our non-profit status,
Industrial accident.
we can't get
You
recognized.
get worked up
They
to
get one of them
that.
Wrong political leanings.
We're gonna investigate it.
I'm gonna ask my doc how much alcohol you have to drink to become an alcoholic, so I can get my disability.
There you go.
I can take all
Down
the
over
empty
the end, you
bottles.
showing the professional basketball game. So don't make him fool you. All right, are we gonna have
We're
a
talking about
commercial or
butter
is it a silent commercial?
We're talking about butter beans.
Are we what?
Having a commercial or is it a silent?
No, we're talking about butter beans right now. Just
Okay.
hang on, man.
Have you heard that theme song?
No.
Just a bowl of butter beans.
What's the name of this show?
Huh?
What's the name of this show?
Wow, Bob.
Hello,
Bob
everybody.
Ronnie show.
We've got a full house here. We've got Jerry Kidd and Ariel Henson and Wild Bob and special, extra special guest Weston Wamp. And what we want to do right now is thank everybody for tuning in. First off, we have had a problem with our sound or lack thereof and other stuff over course of this show, and WLAF has been so courteous and helpful, and they fixed the
Under
stuff.
threat of death.
Yeah, and we hope you can still hear us, and we apologize, and we're certainly glad you can't see us unless you're looking on the internet, and we've got kind of a little space between us there. But what we're gonna do, if you don't care, folks, we'd like to run a couple of commercials here, because we only have 2 sponsors. You know, we're even if we tried, we're a non-profit organization, and what we're trying to do is just pay the bills. So if you'll just bear with us and just really patronize these sponsors, we do appreciate it. And then we're going to turn the show over to Mr. Weston Watt, who happens to be running for Congress, and I'll probably vote for him. I hope you do too. Here goes a guy you might
I'm gonna
know.
vote twice for him.
Are you?
I'll take it.
Well, if this plays, now we're in business. Let's see here. We're not the most high-tech operation in the world.
Well, we've been in business here for
Oh, yeah, let's
75
stop
years.
here and do this over here. We're gonna do this different. We're gonna stop and, where did we? Just bear with me, folks. I'm a little off kilter today because we're doing this different.
Well, we've been in business here for 75 years. I've had 40 years experience in ambulance service. We have a Class A ambulance service. Almost 22 employees. 22 employees that we pay for all on our own. How much taxpayer money goes into this operation? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. We do all kinds of ambulance service. We're graded by the state as a Class A service. We can haul any kind of patients. We can go anywhere. We do a lot of non-emergency transports, nursing home, hospitals, doctor's offices. We go anywhere that patients want to go. We appreciate the opportunity to serve each and every one of our patients. Any kind of insurance you have, we're qualified to take it.
If you need medical transport, that's an ambulance, then call the company that does not require taxpayer money. They either please you or they go out of business. Call Vital Care at 562-9370. And if you can't remember that, just call 911 and tell them you want Vital Care. Works every time. Now that's who Bob recommends anytime you happen to get some tainted tomato juice in your system and need a blood transfusion. But we got another guy here. You might remember Digger. He's in business in the summertime too, and he's fixing things up for picnickers and partiers, and we like old Digger.
Paul Digger Wilson. Been here off and on for over 30 years in the same spot. Pumping propane, doing repairs on containers, heaters. I'm the only one in the county that'll do you a repair on your tanks if you need it. I sell propane gas, liquid propane, and I've got plenty of competitors, and I can easily compete with them. That's grills, backup heat, substitute heat, grills, campers, motor homes, you name it, and if it comes in through that door, I can take care of it. I'm here Tuesday through Friday, 8 till 5, and Saturday, 8 till 12. They could call me at 562-54.
What was that number?
4-4.
562?
5-4-4-4.
54-44 or 544?
5-4-4-4.
He'll be open Monday. I mean, I know it's a holiday, but he'll be there at 12 o'clock.
He is.
Yeah, he's gonna be there
Yeah.
getting people ready to go out and roast them hot dogs.
Do you know he's got more flavors of propane than they have at the ice cream store?
You mean?
get hickory flavor, yeah.
Flavor, hickory flavor,
Oak flavor.
rosewood, whatever you want, he's
I
got it.
had my heart set on vanilla, but, you know, I had some chocolate gravy this morning. You ever had any chocolate gravy? I just had a spoonful.
Yeah, I have.
I'm not in a real mood for chocolate of a morning, but I went over to the Clinchmore reunion, over where they got washed away in 1965.
Right.
And I had, oh boy, they had a spread, and I got to sample some of that chocolate gravy. They eat it over taters and everything.
How about that?
Well, okay, folks.
I appreciate you coming to get me.
Oh, if anybody wants to call in, Ronnie, maybe we ought to give them our number.
What is
We
our
got
number?
566-1450.
Yeah, 562-3557.
Before we even-
3557.
If anybody wants to call in and ask, Mr. Wamp, his daddy was an outstanding congressman.
We are in an enclosed, back room, so you cannot shoot at us.
Before, Bob, we've disarmed Bob, in case you happen to be privy to the notorious previous encounter of Bob and Wes and Wamp. But before we even consider taking any calls, let's let Mr. Wamp here have his say. I'm sure he's got something he wants
Weston,
to
we're
tell us
glad to
about.
see you again.
Thank
We
you.
really are.
Thank you, Bob. It's good to be back. I've been in, this is about my 15th trip to Campbell County in the last 4 months. We've done our best to spend a lot of time up here. Obviously, we go into Scott County, so 2 days ago I was in Campbell County, yesterday I was in Scott County.
Yeah, we
and
heard
for the
you
rest
were
of the
here,
day,
yeah.
we're back, and
Right.
I think we got a good chance. We built a good team in this county,
Well,
and
now, you know you've already been in Campbell County more than your opponent has in 15 years.
I hear you. Well, and I'll tell
I'm
you,
serious.
the way I
Well,
look
now,
at it,
wait a minute now, he's giving away our tax money. He conjoined his hip to William Beard, and they've been going around giving away grants, which is our money.
Yeah, the only problem with that free money is we have to spend it out of our pockets.
And, fishing for votes with our grant money,
right.
which
Well,
I don't think is immoral or ethical.
And respectfully, it's more of the same dog and pony show that we've seen in Washington for a decade now. And so I decided about 4.5 months ago to step up again. My wife and I decided that it was certainly in the best interest of this district to have a choice at the ballot in August as to who would go forward and be the Republican nominee and be the likely congressman from Tennessee's 3rd District. I don't think our incumbent is a whole lot different than the rest of them in Washington. And that is full of a lot of hot air and not real serious about the country's long-term challenges. And I don't know that he's real in touch with what's going on in the counties outside of our hometown. That's part of the reason I've tried to double down and spend the majority of my time on the road. Obviously, the two of us are both from the southern part of this district, but I want people to know up here, everybody's the same. Everybody deserves a congressman, and frankly, where the needs are is where my time's going to be spent as a member of Congress. One thing I'm doing a little different than I was a couple years ago when I got to know you guys is we bought an RV so that we could kind of maximize our campaign time. And so last night was my 3rd consecutive night this week on the RV, and we basically just kind of take it from event to event. It's
Well,
sort
now,
of,
for the right political favor, I got a real nice one, I would have loaned you.
He's got
ours is not real nice.
he's got a houseboat with a basement.
Is that right? Well, maybe we'll just float up and down the river. We can
We
campaign a
tried
whole
to
different
get,
way.
we tried to get him to put that boat construction like an assembly line like Ford did.
Yeah?
And,
Just so
that
you
would
know-
solve the job problem and
Just so you know, there are no votes for sale here, but we can all be rented.
I hear you.
You can't buy my vote, but you can rent it.
I just think that Congress has gotten to a place where a lot of these guys look at themselves as kingmakers, not as representatives. And so in an 11-county district that goes from the Georgia border to the Kentucky border, I thought the most serious way that I could present myself as a person who wanted to be a representative of the people would be to go and spend the night, spend long days in every small town in the district, camp out in Walmart parking lots or Food City parking lots, wherever we can find flat ground, and wake up early in the morning and keep going and try to really get to know people. A lot of times, like you said with Mayor Baird, I think our current congressman will just come into some of the smaller communities, have a picture taken with the mayors, and be gone for a couple of months. And I don't want people to think of me that way as a candidate, and I hope they expect from day one that as your congressman, I'll work harder and spend time everywhere where that needs attention.
tell the folks which congressional district you're campaigning for.
I'm campaigning for Tennessee's 3rd congressional district, which at the Kentucky border is Scott and Campbell County down through Anderson, over to Union, back over to Morgan, Roane, McMinn, Monroe. Now we're getting into southeast Tennessee. Polk, the southern part of Bradley.
Oh, you touched
Did you
Georgia.
gerrymander
Touch
that,
Georgia.
especially that way?
Yeah, this is actually one of the worst gerrymandered districts in the country. I'll tell you one of the cool things about it, I think I've shared this with y'all before. course, I'm from Chattanooga, and I come from the west part of Chattanooga where the geography is almost identical to Campbell County. 'Cause
Right.
we got the Tennessee River runs through a few mountains over there, and I live at the foot of Elder Mountain.
But Georgia's gonna take it away from us, aren't they?
Now, we're gonna keep them from doing that.
Do
They'd
you
like
think-
to.
Do you think we could maybe put up a fence and just down through your district and maybe charge a toll? Anybody wants to go east to west, we could pay off the national debt here in a little
We
while.
could, there's probably some creative ways that guys like us could figure out how to wind the debt back. Actually, next Tuesday, and we're gonna stream it online for everybody to see, we're gonna roll out our campaign platform. Like most of the Congress, Congressman Fleischman has never been very specific about some of the things he'd like to accomplish in Washington, and so we're gonna call it our Agenda of Innovation. You may know that 4 years ago, I helped start a privately funded business incubator, and we support a dozen companies, and we operate as an investment group, and then we also have 30,000 square feet of incubation space downtown, and so I've been involved in technology entrepreneurship, and the truth is, if the government would look back to the private sector for solutions rather than to bureaucrats and politicians, we'd be in good shape. And so we're gonna line out about eight different areas where I really think some innovative thinking can help the government the next decade to address the country's real challenges, both at a local, regional level, and then in Washington, and we're gonna make that stuff available at our website for people to see all over the district, and then we'll begin talking about it from that point forward for the rest of the race. We're even gonna talk about the need, this is wild, that the federal government, the FBI estimates that there's between $80 billion and $250 billion a year of Medicare fraud each year. Between $80 and $250 billion of fraud. Can you imagine if Visa or MasterCard said, well, we think we got fraud somewhere in the range of $170 billion? Nobody would have a Visa or MasterCard. But the government plays by a whole different set of rules, and the truth is technology is now providing private companies ways to detect and get rid of this fraud. The government is just operating 20, 30 years in the
That's just
past.
Medicaid, not talking about Medicare, just Medicaid.
Well, there's no, I'm talking about Medicare fraud, where people actually defraud the
Medicare or
government.
Medicaid,
Medicare.
okay.
That's just Medicare. There's Medicaid fraud on top of that. Of course,
Right.
there's now there's billions of dollars of Social Security disability
I
fraud.
would imagine Medicaid be, more fraud in it than in Medicare.
Right. So you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars just in fraud. And that's, unfortunately, the government that set the standard for the last couple hundred years in the world has grown apathetic about how bloated we've become. The people up there, I think, consider themselves more involved in just a political battle than they actually do the legislating the future of our country. They never dive into the details to fix things. Most of the time, it's just this dog and pony show we've talked about.
If you want to be a real leader, which I think today we're short on real leaders, we don't need an incremental leader, who says, I'm gonna go up and I'm gonna fix this a little bit, I'm gonna move the debt down $1, I'm gonna try to balance the budget, which never gets done. We need radical leadership, real leadership. Somebody will raise the banner and go after drastic changes to stop government interference, like Mr. Henson here. Him and his brother owns a local cement plant.
Concrete.
Concrete, that's right. I've been down there.
You buy cement and make concrete, don't you? But government interference into his business is unbelievable. And it's been terrible in mine.
Yeah.
And even these guys have experienced government interference, national, state, and local levels. And we got to put a stop to that. What made America great was business being able to work with government helping, not hindering.
Right.
If we had a governor with backbone, he would declare Tennessee an EPA-free zone and an OSHA-free zone. Why? Corporations have moved here by the droves.
They're doing state waivers now, at least they're approaching that concept to do a state waiver to get out of the federal EPA and let the states, because we do have we've got a
We're a
pretty.
state environmental
We
program.
do?
Yeah.
All right, now, one thing I look at as far as Weston is concerned here, the House controls the purse strings of this government. Now,
Yeah.
and that affects me as an individual. I have to put my seatbelt on because the federal government says we will deny you money if you don't pass a seatbelt law. I have to drive a certain speed limit down the highway because the government says we will take your road money, cut your road money if you don't impose this speed
Yes.
limit. Okay, so everything, what I'm wondering, if there's not some way that I could sue the federal government for bringing all this misery on me, not just that, but high gasoline prices, that's a responsibility of, and the problem from the government. High food prices are kicking in now because of the government's energy prices. Everything is
And the
kicking.
ethanol interference.
That's all of the problems that we're experiencing economically. Government is not solving, they have caused.
Right. I think the disconnect between Washington and home, whether home's in Chattanooga or La Follette, is bigger than it's ever been. And I think the reason it is, and I got a little sister who just finished law school, so I'm not picking on lawyers, but part of the problem is you don't have as many people like Mr. Henson who've run a small business in the Congress as there used to be. And there's this mentality that's wrong that doesn't just identify problems and then try to fix them in a pragmatic, patriotic way. Instead, these guys will find what the problems are. They'll first try to prove the other guy's at fault. Then they'll start talking about what the solutions could be, but why the other guy's ideas are wrong, and it gets drug out and litigated, and unfortunately the mentality in Washington, I don't think is even where it ought to be.
Very, very true.
You know, the Tea Party gave us a promise, but they haven't done a thing. You know, your opponent ran as a Tea Party candidate
Right.
and won the primary and then won the general. And he hasn't done a thing. Now, he has a high conservative rating because he votes to try to keep that score up.
Right. Yeah,
But he hadn't done anything.
Gentlemen, to make this kind of a simple way of saying things, the government, and I heard a local politician back long ago told us that the government had to protect us from ourselves. That we didn't have sense enough, I reckon, to protect ourselves.
But we were allowed to pay the bills, weren't we?
That's correct.
We were
can
taxed to
the
pay
bills.
their bills, yeah.
The business people out here, the way I'm seeing it, we can take care of ourselves. If we're going to do something, if we're going to make a mistake and we're paying for it, I don't see it as how any of the government's business, what we do. If we've been hit with the building codes of everything that you can think of. If I own a piece of property and I want to go out here and build a house, if I'm paying for it and it falls down, if I build it out of cardboard, or if I'm smart enough to build it out of a harder material, that should be my business. And this is just a typical example of where the government has gone to, and it's like Bob says about seatbelts. Young people or children or whatever, people underage, I can see where that they should be secured. And then leave it up to the operator to, if he isn't smart enough to use, or if he don't take enough concern about his welfare to wear a seatbelt, that should be his decision. And this goes on with, this is just typical examples of where we're at as far as government. And whenever you mention detachment from the Washington to us down here, I've come to the point, I don't think Washington cares what we think. They have no idea as to where we're at. We've got people in Washington that have been there their entire lives. They have no understanding of what the people down here on the bottom, and I consider ourselves to be bottom feeders. We're surviving out of the dumpsters. And the people up there, we're paying their bills plus trying to pay ours. And if this goes on the way it's going, if there's no change, this country is done for. And we can call it pessimism or whatever we want to, but there's been studies run, and I heard a statement, I didn't hear the entire statement the other day, that I believe a senator, I believe he is, from Florida stated that how good things were under communism.
Yeah, that's Barbara
His name
Boxer.
was Joe, no, it was
No,
Joe.
They're going
What's
crazy, they're
his
going
name?
crazy up there.
What's her
West.
name?
No, Joe Garcia, I believe was the gentleman's name.
Okay, all right.
But there's been surveys already run as to how many people in this country, just a survey, as to how many will accept socialism or think that socialism is the route to go. And if you take a look right now, well, it was a large percentage. It was a little less than 50% at that time, and it may be higher now. From what I'm hearing, more people are becoming more acceptable to socialism.
That's those that are receiving, not those that are giving.
If you will turn the people loose to generate wealth, they will. And when you build up a reserve, then the socialists can spend that money and make everybody happy, and everything goes fine till you run out of the wealth that's been generated by people that actually go out and work to achieve something. And when that's gone, it's belly up. You got to start over, and that's where we're headed. I hate to say it, but such a fine point you made, Bob, was on this purse strings thing. This gentleman here will be part of the crowd that decides when to turn the money loose and when to not. And that is the key to controlling what's going wrong right now. I mean, we can make laws all we want to, but if they can't pay to enforce them, I like what he said.
Like you had in the Senate, you had the guy that was fighting Obamacare, okay, what was his name?
Cruz?
The one that looks like.
Cruz?
Cruz, Ted Cruz, all right.
Looks like Tail Gunner Joe.
He tried to convince him that he was fighting a useless battle. I admire somebody that will fight a battle that they know they're gonna lose. You gotta constantly fight that battle, and the House of Representatives can corral in this runaway government spending that we have. It can do it.
Right.
It's not gonna be all that popular.
Weston, you know the basis of all wealth is property and natural resources. It's the basis of all wealth. In Europe under feudalism, the king owned everything. And that's the way it's getting over here now.
Yeah.
You know, people came here because they could actually own land.
Right.
And government has figured out, not only federal government, but local and state as well, has figured out ways to tax property. You can't even put anything on your property without going down and asking permission, what they call purchasing a permit, paying for that permit. So you don't even have the right to do anything on your property without their permission.
It's without you buy permission.
You purchase permission.
You cannot just go and ask permission, which you shouldn't even have to ask permission. But, Wes, you're, as a congressman, you'll be one of about 430 some.
35.
435. You're going to be put in with a group, and the way it stands right now, I'm going to say that 60% or maybe 70% are not going to see things the way you do, in my opinion.
I think it's more than that, but it's a lot.
Right.
It's far majority.
Until we change the rules, we're not going to get anything done. We've got people that are in position, are lawmakers. Every day they're making laws, just untold numbers of laws that nobody even knows what the laws are. And one of the things that I'm really paying attention to is they're changing the meaning of the words. Now that sounds kind of goofy like, but on a lot of the state stuff that you fill out now as for your permits and whatever, it'll tell you up front that you don't use the standard definition for the words. You go back and use whatever definition they assign to that word. And that don't sound like much, but the one that really caught my eye is when we changed the definition of the word marriage. Now, if we go back, if words count, if they mean anything, that one little word that says O-W-N, own, if you go back to the definition of that word, it simply says that what you control. And when we say we own property, I've come to the conclusion that no person in the United States of America owns 1 square inch of real estate.
We're basically renting it.
Well, John Locke talked about this in his treatise back in the 1600s. That word O-W-N that he's talking about, and that's why people came over here, because they could actually own their land. Are you familiar with the Article 5 movement?
I'm sorry.
No,
Well,
go ahead.
whenever we, in my opinion, we lease all properties. Now, all real estate And we've been fed what I consider to be a line whenever they talk about a deed. I don't believe anywhere on a deed it says that you own property. It says that you can hold and whatever, and a deed only gives you the cause of the definitions of where a pen is drove and a pen is drove. But it does not say that you can use that as you see fit. And I can see a certain amount of rules. But we've got locally here till you can't do nothing without you pay for permission to do it. And I think we need to do something about this. And I don't think that you, as an individual, a member of 435, will have a great lot. I know you can try. You can do whatever you can try.
Right.
But what you would have to do is persuade others to see things the way you do.
You bet.
And that's not an easy task.
Well, not only persuade others, but I think go and recruit others from around the country to challenge members of Congress who are ineffective. And we're in the process of giving the country an example of what that looks like, to run a good, hard, clean race against an incumbent, give people a choice. I think the people will respond to having a choice in a head-to-head race against an incumbent. I think you're right. I know it's not easy. I'm not signing up for it because it's easy. I want you guys to hold me accountable to the point that you say, hey, you know, remember when you came and saw us at the radio station and your hands were dirty because you've been out putting signs in the ground and your shirt tail's untucked. And remind me that at this point in my process of going forward, representing y'all and helping to fix the future of the country, that I'm a hard-headed, strong-willed person who believes in the history of our country and believes in the future of our country. And unfortunately, what happens more often than not, this is the 60 or 70, 80% that I don't agree with, is they tend to go there, regardless of party affiliation, to make friends. And I'm just telling you, I'm not going there to make friends. I got a lot of friends in East Tennessee, and my loyalties will be here, my weekends will be spent here, and it's just kind of it's a different attitude than a lot of people go to Washington with.
Have you been following the Article 5 movement?
No, tell me about it.
It's an effort on the part of some very conservative people to hold a constitutional amendment convention.
Right.
Not a constitutional convention to change the Constitution. We love the Constitution if they would just abide by it and go by it.
Right.
And live up to the written word as it's in that Constitution. But they're wanting to have an amendment convention to provide amendments to strengthen property ownership, strengthen all the rights with further clauses and amendments that would add strength to the Constitution and provide penalties for people who do not live up to the oath they take.
Right. I'm going to say something. I think I saw my friend RL write down the fair tax, and I'll just go ahead and tell you.
Go right ahead, please.
That when we release my platform, we call it an agenda of innovation. There's basically 8 major parts of it. One of them is the fair tax. I simply believe the fair tax is, frankly, the fairest and purest form of taxation. And I think that's really tried and true over time, that what I refer to as point of consumption or point of purchase taxation taxes people not on their productivity, not on what they earn, but based on what they spend.
Or what they
How
own.
counterintuitive is it that if you work hard and you're successful, that we tax you on your success?
Don't tax what
If you
I
go
own.
buy a bunch of
Yeah.
expensive boats and all sorts of stuff, you may be taxed on that.
Well, we will spend the money. I
Yeah,
mean,
do you know what an encouragement would be to know that you got to keep every penny you made, and you're just as greedy and as selfish as you can be. You go out there and make all the money you can, and you'll just dig and scratch, and then sooner or later, then you're gonna spend it.
And what you save, that you're not taxed on.
Yeah, there'll be a bump there when there's not much tax, but you know, money's not worth anything unless you spend it.
Well, let me say a couple things to you about the fair tax that you may be familiar with, and you've seen some of it in your own business
well,
probably.
what I've done is I've read the book, and every one that I can find,
Right.
I buy it and get handed out. But yet, you'd be surprised, this is one of the questions I ask politicians if I get a chance to ask. And you'd be surprised at the people that have never read this book, and it's a short read and simple. Even a guy finished the 3rd grade can understand it.
Right. Well, it makes a lot of sense.
I've had politicians that I make mention of this, and oh yeah, I'm gonna read it. Next time I speak to them, oh well, I haven't had the time.
Right.
Well, I have a question. I haven't
Okay, I'm
read
sorry,
it.
go ahead.
Would the fair tax eliminate property tax?
No, sir.
No.
This takes.
Well,
up
we need to do
federal.
something, we need to do something about property tax.
Property tax we need to deal with on the local
Yeah,
level.
local
Is
level.
what we need to do. We need to take care of local, is what we
Hold
need to
on,
do.
let's see if we got a call coming in. Hey, Wild Bob and Ronnie Show.
Well, I won't tell you, Wild Bob, I went out there the other day and sold 5 pounds of flattened cans on that hillside, and Fred Cole gave me a county mayor, Fred Cole for county mayor, a picture and card of him. And everybody knows I'm voting for E.L. Moore.
Well, Mary, what about Jack Lynch?
I don't know Jack Lynch. I'm voting for E.L. Everybody knows it. So
Well,
I
what-
said my say, and you have a good day.
Well, now, wait a minute, tell us what EL's done.
Do what?
What has EL done for us?
He's had such a fight of getting in that I'm gonna vote for him.
Hey, Mary, this is Weston Wamp. I'd be honored to have your vote. I'm running for Congress.
Well, who you running against?
I'm running against a guy named Chuck Fleischman.
Well, I voted against him the other time.
Well, good. I appreciate your vote. I'm the only person running against him this time.
Well, they sat on their hands, so I think it's time they showed their best.
Mary, you'll have to ask for a Republican, ballot for the primary so you can vote for Weston.
Well, it's gonna come down to a shuffle. And
What?
I hope a lot of them gets a flogging and gets flogged out there.
Why,
Now, everybody out there can ask for a Republican primary ballot, and you will get a county general ballot, and you need to ask for the Republican primary ballot so you can vote for Mr. Wong.
It's an important point, just because even in Hamilton County, my home county, all the local races are having their general election. So frankly, there's a lot of people who aren't from the same party I am, who are planning on picking up a,
Well, I vote independent and for whoever I think the best one is, and
Well, this
I vote.
this is the man you need to vote for this time.
All
okay,
right.
Yeah, Mary,
right,
there's no Democrat primary for Congress, I don't think. in
No,
this
there's not.
district. So, you don't,
Whatever.
so
I'll
you'd waste a
see
vote
the
if
ballot
you-
and see if I can squeeze you in.
well,
Thank you, Mary.
since there's no Democrat contest in the primary, ask for a Republican ballot and
All
vote for Mr. Wong.
Tell your friends
I hear
too.
you,
Right.
man. I hear you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mary.
you.
Bye.
right. See ya.
And you need to stress that
I
point.
know,
Every
it's
county
important.
you go
Our
in.
signs, our smaller signs actually say Republican primary, just so
That's
people
how,
get
that's
I
how,
wanted to be clear.
that's how Flashman beat Ronnie Smith in the
I know,
primary.
I know.
Yeah.
He got, he stressed the fact there's
Well,
no Democrat
probably what
primary,
happens a
so
lot of
ask for a
times,
Republican and vote for him.
now, what happens a lot of times, correct me if I'm wrong, since there is no Democratic primary, the
Yeah.
Democrats will ask for a Republican ballot,
Yeah.
okay? And then they will try to vote for the one they think's least likely to beat their Democratic,
And that may be the case in this
Oh, we
district.
don't register by party in Tennessee,
Right.
so
But
you can ask for either one.
That's right, but in this district, it's about, the way they've gerrymandered it, it's about 65 Republican, 35 Democrat district. So the winner of our primary has got a very high likelihood of going on and serving.
Right.
So most of the Democrats who weigh into this primary will just be choosing who they'd rather have as their congressman. What I'm asking people for is a chance. We've had the same congressman for 4 years, and very few people in this district, I think, have seen much of anything in terms of leadership. I'm not asking people to send me to Congress for 10 years. I want a 2-year term and an opportunity to prove myself. And if I don't do the job well, I hope RL will run against me.
And if he's anything like his daddy, folks, Zach Wamp was one of the best congressmen we had in Tennessee for many, many years, and if he's anything like his daddy, he'll do what he says he does.
He set a high standard. I want to share one thing with y'all, just because it's very similar to what Mr. Henson was talking about, running a company and this disconnect in Washington. And really, what we're talking about is the way our country was at its very beginning, and so much of our core precepts, our core ideals have eroded. We used to so value
But
people's-
government has eroded it.
Right,
That's where the problem
That's
is.
what I mean,
Yes.
absolutely. The government has really came in and taken away a lot of the liberties that made our country what it is. This is the way I like to describe it. I think some type of entrepreneurship is in effect what has always set our country apart. Because from the very beginning, in our great declaration of the world, we basically told people, in this country, you come to the United States of America, and your ability to go do what you want to do is going to be protected.
You know,
If that means you run a concrete business, you run a concrete business. It
Yeah.
means you want to go into ministry, ministry. You can go do what you want to do, and that's what's made us different this far.
Do you know the first law that the U.S. Congress passed?
Tell me.
The patent laws and the copyright laws to protect people's ownership of their intellectual property and their physical property, their inventions and everything. It was the first thing they did. They created the Office of Patents and Copyrights. The very first thing our Congress did, and we've gotten away from that.
Right. Well, as we
Now we
as the
erode
government-
that.
As the government encroaches on people's ability to go start a company and go and frankly make the prospects for their family and their children and grandchildren brighter than it was for their generation, our country is founded, I think, on one core concept, my opinion, that we're trying, all of us, in our own ways, in our own lives, in our own businesses, to leave things better than we found it, to leave this country better than we found it. That is the one common denominator of every state in this country, and I think almost every family in this country, is a desire and attempt to leave it better than we found it.
And when the
That's not
president-
necessarily happening right now.
And when the president says he did not do it, he did not do it, he did not do it, and I didn't do it, that just makes me want
Or
to throw
there's a
up.
community to do it, don't you know that?
I believe it.
But that's saying that government's responsible for everything we've done.
And
And
I'll
they're
tell you-
not,
I'll tell
they
you this,
stood in our way.
when we think about the Congress as 435 people from all across the country, now this is an incredibly diverse country. And so many of our states are frankly very different even than other states. I think it's important for districts in places like East Tennessee, where there's still more common sense there is in a lot of parts of the world and a lot of parts of this country. It's important that we send people to Washington who aren't just status quo, but go and actually represent common sense. Because I'll tell you, it's places like Campbell County or Hamilton County, where I come from, where on issues like marriage, there's still common sense. We still see the world the way it ought to be. We still see what we want this country to be like through the eyes, I think, of our founding fathers. We don't want building permits out our ears. We want to be able to go and own land and do things basically, like the way you described it. It's so unbelievable that we don't have the right. We don't. It's, I think in word we do, but in deed we don't actually have the right to go and build the kind of things we want to build on our own land, and in so many cases go and do the things we want to do with our own lives because the government's trying to put all these rules in place a lot of times just to get money out of it.
Folks, that is Weston Wong, the man who you should vote for because he has a philosophy closer to the founding fathers of any candidate in this election.
Well, here's what I would like to see the House of Representatives do, okay? Because you hold the purse strings, and you really, the federal government has made whores out of the states with money. Now, you need to make a whore out of the federal executive branch by, with the money that you got and your ability to control it, and every time you crack the whip, that executive branch is supposed to execute your will. That's the only job they got, is to execute the will of Congress. And right now, it's not executing any of the will that Congress would have. I think, while I'm on my soapbox here, I think the EPA ought to be defunded and reconstituted as a reasonable operation of the government. I think the Endangered Species Act ought to be done away with and redone in a sensible way. I think the tax code needs to be completely done away with, and if it takes a fair code, that's what I'm for. You ought to do that. And then I think in all areas, the House needs to control what the government does by cutting the funding off. I don't care if it takes a government shutdown. You know, I never knew they were shut down unless somebody told me. You know, because and you know, shut it down if that's what it takes.
Another current issue, which I'm sure you're encountering on your campaign trail, is this hideous method by which the Veterans Administration is being administered. And we see what's happening in the VA with these lists and these delays and these people dying because they can't get medical help or the medical necessities they need, is a microcosm of Obamacare. When we turn all our medical services over to the government, it's going to be that way nationwide. And that's what happens when you let bureaucrats take over instead of your doctors.
Right. Well, going back to this platform and agenda that's based on some innovative solutions, one of them we're going to talk about is the VA. Because the truth is, our country should hold in higher esteem the commitment and sacrifice of our veterans than submit them, frankly, to a VA system that doesn't do what it's supposed to do. The idea behind the VA and VA healthcare is that they actually get excellent care, tailored to their needs. Well, the problem is that's not how it happens. If you live in Campbell County, you're going to Johnson City. If you live in Athens, Tennessee, believe this or not, you got to drive through Chattanooga all the way over to Murfreesboro, passing a whole bunch of hospitals on the way. So when I get to Congress from day one, I'm going to be an advocate for drastic modernization and reform within the VA. I think we need to create a voucher type program where veterans basically get to choose.
Wonderful.
They
Great
get to
idea.
choose.
Great
I ought to be able to
idea.
go get care where they want to,
Right.
create as many market-based efficiencies as possible. And that way, frankly, veterans are going to be served better, and you can hold the Veterans Administration hospitals accountable.
Less money.
And get rid of bonuses. Why are bureaucrats getting bonuses? You know, and they're getting them on doctored documentation. You know, they're saying, oh, we only have 2-week waiting list here in Phoenix. You know, and they get a bonus for it. Well, they were keeping 2 separate records, one for their bonuses, one for the real issues that people were dying of.
Well, you know, you had,
Government employees don't need bonuses. They got every benefit in the world already.
you had Fannie Mae and Fannie Mac getting an awful lot of bonuses, you know, which is a quasi-government operation.
Right.
And you got TVA paying bonuses to constantly lose money. You got a lot of areas that we need to work on.
Well, this voucher system, what you're speaking of as far as the veterans, that's, to me, is a far superior way, because in the private sector, we have doctors that, I don't know exactly how to say, I don't say whether one is better than the other, but we have a very good health system. And what you're speaking of there, as far as vouchers, is, in my opinion, the way to handle it. But the thing that crossed my mind whenever I get real aggravated about things and try to look at it in a cold, hard, cruel facts of life, we make a statement, and this is Memorial Day and whatever. We say, I always hear this statement, these soldiers, they gave their lives. I know a lot of soldiers that if they had a choice, they wouldn't have been there. And whenever you say gave, there are soldiers who volunteer, went out there and gave their lives for things. But there's a ton of them that their lives were taken. They were taken from the farm, taken from the family, sent out there. And Korea was one of the top examples of this thing. If anybody, I have a personal interest in Korea. I have a relative who was one of the first units in, before the Marines ever got there. They was the first. They were sent from Japan. They was in there on July the 4th and 5th when this thing started. But I kind of lose my chain of thought on this thing, but those soldiers, a lot of them that were put out there, they were not battle ready. You go out here, back then we thought that the war to end all wars had done been fought. And this bothers me, the way we word this stuff. And I hear some of the soldiers say things, and I'm sure some of them mean it. But they come back and they're shot all to pieces, they got their limbs missing and whatever else. And I hear some of them, they say, well, I'll go right back out there and do it again. You give them a few years, let them think about it, and they may not be of the same opinion.
Right.
Whenever they see whenever they come back, just like the veterans do right now, and try to get help out of the VA, they may not feel that way about it. Or that's kind of the way I see it.
Well, that voucher,
You're right.
that voucher idea is a great idea. And Wouldn't that also work better for our school systems?
Yeah, well, the truth
If we
is,
had, I mean, if the federal government's gonna get involved in the schools, you know, throw out Common Core and let's go with a voucher system, where
Or you
these
do away
kids
with the education department.
can take their money with them, even if they go to a private
to
school.
be honest with you, it's really not radical to talk about in 2014, in the next 10 years, as the federal government has to downsize. We know that. We can't pay the bills unless aspects of the federal government that aren't necessary or aren't effective are frankly thrown out. Well, Bob's right. The Department of Education has never done anything right. 50-year track record. All of our test scores compared to the world have been static or dropped since the Department of Education was instituted. Decisions in the classroom ought to be made as close to the classroom as possible. So either in the classroom at the teacher level, principal level, local school board level, or at a state level, but definitely not at the federal government level where you try to put a one-size-fits-all approach on everybody. Because the truth is, I don't think that students at Campbell County High School necessarily should be treated the same exact way, held to the same standards, or taught the same direction as students in Boston, Massachusetts, or Las Vegas, Nevada. It may be very different because the quality of life, the intentions of graduates are very different. The ambitions of graduates may be very different. So let's set our students up for success, but not hold them to some dummy national standard coming from the federal government. It's another experiment from the federal government.
Very good.
The federal government has no direction from the Constitution to get involved in education anyhow.
No. In fact, Thomas Jefferson even said, I wish that our Constitution, his personal opinion was that he wished that the U.S. Constitution had allowed for the federal government to be involved, but he specifically says it does not, and therefore the federal government should not be involved, which is pretty
And
interesting.
anything you can do to bring a halt to this foolishness that there's a concept known as separation of church and state, that is not part of the founding fathers. You know, the leftists, the socialists who want to bring religion out of the schools, we need an amendment or something to let them put religion back into the schools, because you know the original formation of our schools was to so people could read the Word of God.
You bet.
That's true. But now,
And be
one
close to their
thing
religion.
I do feel you got a couple ways of doing this thing. If you do not keep religion out of the schools, then you're going to have to allow religion into the schools, namely Islam, Sharia law, and everything else would have just as much right to come into the school as would the Baptists, the Presbyterians, Protestants, the Catholics.
Well, the original idea of this separation of church and state was for the state not to sponsor a specific
That's what it
religion.
says.
Not vice versa.
Yeah. And not to,
But
not to
let your
condemn-
locals
Yes.
have their own religion in
Yeah,
there.
but
If
not-
you're in Dearborn, Michigan,
Yeah.
let them teach Sharia
Well,
law
the
in
argument
their
of
local
people, I'll
schools.
say this, the argument of people who want a separation of church and state completely, there's one flaw, or weakness at least, to their argument. And this is a little different than the way most people look at it, but I expect to work hard for the next couple months, get the Republican nomination, and go serve in Congress. Well, I personally, in my life, am a Bible-believing Christian young man. Well, my beliefs, in a lot of ways, are going to dictate my policy and legislation. You can't separate that, because the people, if we elect people into leadership positions in this country who come from a faith background, you can't separate church and state in a sense, right? That's the way I look at it.
Correct.
Well,
But-
it's an ancient axiom. What you teach in the schools today is what your government will be tomorrow. So if you're not teaching religion, God, ethics, morals, right and wrong in your schools, you're not going to have it in your government.
We all will see as we kind of wrap up this evening, our Campbell County signs. We're going to do some smaller signs, but sort of this weekend around the district, we've made an intentional effort to get a bunch of our bigger signs out. And they've got kind of a simple message. My name's at the bottom, but it doesn't even say what office I'm running for, and the sign's just big and white. It says, "Pray for our country." Because the truth is, some of this stuff's out of our hands. There's no doubt that our country needs laborers. It needs people to step up who care about leaving this place better than we found it. We're also in a place where, people of faith need to step up and start praying for our country and doing what they can in their communities at a local and state level to get involved, I think, even at a political level. Because there are certain things that need to happen in our country that can happen and be fixed by businesses, by philanthropies, by churches. There are certain things that have to be fixed in this country that can only happen in the Congress. that's why I think what I'm doing is really important. And why it's important that we don't just let people in Washington get away with the status quo.
You don't, that's the Keystone Pipeline.
Well, there's a whole bunch of things, tax reform, and we can't downsize the debt.
That can be fixed by government.
This fair tax, in my opinion, is one of the key things. In most everything, there's a key part, I don't care what it is, if it's a rock slide, there's one rock that will turn a rock slide loose. This fair tax is one of the key things, in my opinion, and it's so simple, that would really help this country get on the right track.
But the problem with passing the fair tax is politicians lose control.
They don't
But
need.
common sense tells you that if we stop taxing income, we're gonna have a massive inflow of money that's offshore right now.
Yeah,
We're gonna have more assets than we've ever had.
There's
that money-
$17 trillion laying out there that won't come back into
Yeah.
the country
That-
now because of policies.
That money will be spent though. When
Yes,
comes
it
back,
will eventually,
will
you
be
don't sit
used.
on it forever.
It will be used to buy equipment, you name it. It don't make any difference what they spend it
But it
for.
will be taxed at the discretion of the spender. It's not taxed until he decides that I'm ready to spend it.
That's correct.
And it will flow much more so than it does now.
If you
Yeah,
can get,
true.
if you can get people to read this book, and it's so simple, get them to read it.
But you
Well, now, wait a
cannot
minute, we're
convince
still worried about
politicians to
teaching them
relinquish
how to
control.
Well, anybody can learn to read if they know the 26 letters and how
Now,
to
now,
put it
let me
together.
tell you something that happened to me. I had two young men come down to my store, I bought a few items off of them. I got to talk to them, both of them have done fairly well, they own a home, own an automobile, and they work every day. Neither one of them had ever stepped foot in a school here in Campbell County, they're born right here. I said, you go to school? Said, no, we went to wood and cut wood when we were kids. They never went to school, and there was never anything, it's probably good, probably the best thing happened to them really, but they never went to school, you know?
Where'd you attend school, Weston?
I went to the University of Tennessee in Knoxville.
Me too.
High school? Where'd you go to high school?
I was high school at a place called Chattanooga Christian in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Right at the foot of Lookout Mountain.
What were the private schools there in Chattanooga?
The big ones are Baylor and Macaulay. Those are the real
Baylor and
class
Macaulay.
schools, yeah.
Ted Turner attended one of those.
He attended Macaulay.
Macaulay got kicked out. He was a wild man as
That's
a young
right.
person.
That's right.
He was, and Ted Turner.
went to school.
You
in-
got
fact,
kicked out.
Oh, he was a
He
great,
probably
great,
bored them to
he
death.
was a great Southerner.
Yeah.
So he married that Jane Fonda and got mind raped by Hollywood.
Look, folks, this is not necessarily the opinion of Weston Moss. We're just off on the side here now.
Yeah, but, yeah, sorry I'm getting off subject here, but, yeah, I just, so you attended the high school in Chattanooga, beautiful place. Used to have more smog than Shanghai, China, or
Yeah, we've
whatever.
turned ourselves around. It's a
Beijing,
lot different
it's
than it used to be.
beautiful now.
Yeah.
Back in 1970, I guess 1970, when the EPA was created, we had a real problem with our air and our water and our soil, everything. But we've done that. Right now, the air and the water are the cleanest they've ever been in the lifetimes of anybody now living. And it's time to realize that you're going to have to stir up some dirt if you grow a tater, and you can't live if you don't make a little mess.
And you have to run a lawnmower to mow your grass,
You certainly do.
you know, or a weed
And it's
eater.
hard. I mean, nobody can
I
push
mean,
them.
you know, we can't outlaw
Well,
everything.
of course, I've got a great grass-powered lawnmower right now.
You reckon that those in government never read the reports or anything, that they're not aware that there's not been any increase in temperature in the past 17 and a half years? And that there's more ice in the Antarctic now than there's been in many a year, that the western glacier is probably disintegrating, but it will take it to 2009-40 before it ever falls off.
According to my clock, we've got a little less than 4 minutes. Mr. Womp, if you'd like to just have your say for the rest of this time, just feel free.
Put
And
some
thank
kind
you
of
so
cap on
much
this
for
madness
coming.
that we
Yeah.
just had.
No, guys, it's an honor to be with you. It's funny. I actually love radio because it's unpredictable. You can have real substantive conversation. It's not just soundbite stuff. And most politicians, particularly at a national level, won't ever do live radio interviews. My opponent never does live radio interviews.
Yeah.
You guys can try it, but.
I don't
in
know if he
Chattanooga,
does
they
any
keep people-
interviews at
Well,
all.
they may not, but the point is, they're
We've never
worried
had
they
it
they're
here.
worried they may say the wrong thing. And if nothing else, I try to tell people a few things about me. I'm not the guy to make big promises, but I'll leave you guys and your listeners with this. We won't always agree on everything, but I'll always shoot you straight. And secondly, whether I'm 27, 37, or 47, as long as I'm in politics and wanting to represent you, you'll have an open door and my cell phone number, and you'll be able to get a hold of me when you need to. Because I think that's the way this ought to be done. And unfortunately, kind of going back to what I said when we got on the air, these guys look at themselves like they're kingmakers and they're important and they need security. And the truth is, going back to our country's founding, we used to send people to Washington who came from among us, were working people, stayed in touch with people back home, and were held accountable. And at the point that they were no longer in touch with people back home, they'd usually get replaced.
Right, well, one thing we will be looking at very closely, we would like to know what your handicap is now, and then 2 years from now, we'd like to check your handicap and see exactly if it's better or not.
I hear you.
Thank you, sir, for showing up.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of guts to face this crowd.
And the word, right there, I hope they never change the meaning of the word truth. I know, I'm sure they're working on it, and they've been in 14 different ways. But if we could get.
Now, that's the word is that you're
Yeah,
changing.
yeah, it is, but if we can get the truth,
Right.
we've got something we can deal with. I'd rather have correct information. I'd rather have no information than incorrect information.
Well, we need people in Washington who'll shoot us straight. Because the picture's not real pretty, but if we know the facts, and we know the truth, we can handle it.
Life is not
I
always
can
pretty.
deal with
Is
it.
this your tactical thing here?
Okay.
Well, thank you, man. It's
Well,
been
Well,
fun.
we appreciate having you.
We appreciate
I'll come back and see
Hope
you.
you'll come back again, we
You bet.
really do.
We appreciate
Thank
you
you,
coming
Mr.
by.